Prepare to alter reality and rewrite time as we take a look at 9th level spells. Hello there everyone, welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire, mostly recovered from that seasonal sickness floating its way around through the household. You may hear my voice or tone kind of shift or change or possibly even crack because speaking for extended periods of time still messes with it just a touch. But today we are going to be taking a look at the next step of our first edition Pathfinder Arcanist guide. Today we are going to be taking a look at 9th level spells. This is the pinnacle of what any spellcaster could hope to achieve, and while these spells may have been talked about in previous guides before, for those of you that might be new to the channel or have not really ever played a caster or gone over any of those other guides, we are going to be covering some classics, but we're going to try to talk about some other interesting selections that you can have. Probably also doing a follow-up with more 9th level spells, taking a look at some good options, not just the best like we are today, and then going over some that are okay or possibly niche, and then giving you a few examples of spells to avoid. But that said, a 9th level spell is still a 9th level spell. It's more a question of, do you have previous spells on previous levels that can duplicate the effect or do it better, or are you trading off a fairly powerful effect for a relatively lesser one? But before we get into all of that, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already gone on ahead and listed yourself on that incredible roster of legendary heroes, then go on down to hit the like button and share the video far and wide. Now, let's get into things, and we're going to be starting off with two classics here. First is Time Stop. You speed yourself up so fast that the world seems to stop for 1d4 plus 1 rounds. You can't move or damage held items, and fires, gases, etc., any kind of static or sustained effects like that that are already in play can still harm you, and your spells can't harm targets until Time Stop ends. But at minimum, you are getting 2 full rounds worth of actions if you have quickened meta magic or any rods that duplicate the quickened meta magic effects. You can throw out a lot of spells fairly quickly and rapidly alter the tide of any fight, or really any situation that you might happen to find yourselves in. Doesn't necessarily have to be a combat encounter. Next is Wish. Now, Wish costs you a pretty penny, requiring a spellcasting component of a 12,000 gold piece diamond. That's the value the diamond has to have. So that's the biggest thing that prevents you from just throwing this out there willy-nilly left and right and just completely overriding reality. But this does let you duplicate any sorcerer or wizard spell of 8th level or lower, or any non-sorcerer spell of 7th level or lower. So that gives you a pretty broad access in magic just right there, albeit at a fairly steep financial cost. This will allow you to do things, an example of undo recently inflicted critical hits, undo Gaius or quest spell effects, alter the fabric of reality, though this is dangerous and is subject greatly to DM discretion. That said, for DMs and players out there thinking about using this spell or interpreting it, DMs, this is a spell being cast by a player. They're being pretty clear about the effects that they're wanting to have, but for players out there, please try to be a bit specific. Just wishing that the main villain, whatever dire threat is in front of you, is simply gone, that's a bit too broad there. That allows the DM to go, okay, let's see what happens here. Maybe they roll a dice to represent chance of what happens, but they could potentially just interpret that as, well, now they're in the next room over where you can't see them. They are technically gone from here. They are no longer on this particular timeline. You have thrown them centuries into the future. You have thrown them centuries into the past. You could inflict incredible untold damage with this spell. So be thoughtful in what you're doing. But again, DMs, because the player is casting this, maybe interpret things in their favor as much as is reasonably possible. You don't want them to just simply have easy I win buttons to throw out there, but it is a spell that they are casting. If this were coming from an Ifrit or another creature, say some kind of ancient fey creature, sure, those kinds of beings, they are going to broadly interpret things and twist the meaning of the words to still suit the spell effect and create entirely different or unintended results. But when a player's casting it, lean or err a bit more in their favor rather than fully playing against them, unless they are being absolutely thoughtless with what they're doing. But next, we go on from there to a spell that can have a little bit of danger, but more in a meta sense than anything else. That's Mage's Disjunction. Select a 40-foot radius burst, or select a single magic item that's within 25 feet plus 5 feet every 2 caster levels. Bear in mind, again, this means this is another spell that you can boost with your arcane exploits reservoir. You can spend one of those points out of the arcane reservoir and increase your caster level by 2 or by 3. Spells and spell-like effects within the area of effect are unraveled, ending immediately. Each permanent magic item gets a will save or ends up functioning like a normal item for 1 minute per caster level. If an item saving throw is a natural 1, the item is outright destroyed. Selecting a specific item gives a -5 penalty to the target item's will saves, and artifacts are not immune to this. So why is this potentially dangerous? Well, it's the item is destroyed part. You are potentially going to be destroying valuable loot to pick up afterwards, and the other players may have some issue with that. But given that I like to, while this guide is about breaking down the mechanical effects, trying to help you understand what is mechanically effective, what are going to be some of the best bang for your buck kind of spells or effects or whatever you might be selecting as you build your character, I still like to go at things from a story perspective, and honestly, from a story perspective, role-playing, you're an Arcanist, you are looking at this incredible dire threat, you're at the end game boss, the end game encounter, whatever spells, effects, and magic items are present, or even artifacts, you're potentially looking at world-ending or world-altering threats. Who cares about the magic items? If they break, so be it. That's the cost of saving the world. But odds are you're probably just going to end up suppressing the item for the entirety of the fight, and there's probably still going to be valuable things to retrieve afterwards. That said, don't sacrifice a good story result for the sake of thinking, ooh, do I want to destroy all this loot? Sure, it's fine to have the thought cross your head and do the cost, risk, benefit analysis kind of calculations and all of that, but really, this is an incredibly effective spell, just for the fact that this ends spell and spell-like effects just in that area flatly, and that you can suppress magic items on top of it and potentially break them, and you can affect artifacts with it. That's huge. Mage's Disjunction is great to have. Definitely have this in your spellbook. Next, we have Ikian's excellent Enclosure. Touch and conjure an immobile 10-foot radius invisible sphere of force that cancels out all magic within for 1 round per caster level, as if affected by anti-magic field. The sphere has a hardness of 40 and 20 hit points per caster level, while also being immune to dispel magic and vulnerable to a sphere of annihilation or a rod of cancellation. Spells can't be cast inside, into, or out of the enclosure, and teleportation effects that would ignore a wall of force fail due to the enclosure's field of anti-magic. So why is this great? This sounds like something that would be a hindrance to you, and that's the point. It's a hindrance to you, and those like you. So this isn't something you want to be inside of. No, this is something you want to catch an enemy caster in and have them stuck in there with the party's fighter or barbarian. And most spellcasters, clerics might be kind of okay in there, but they're still going up against, ideally, an opposing person who has a full attack bonus progression, a high strength and constitution score, and the ability to dish out a ton of damage without being dependent on magical effects. So they are going to probably be dishing out an incredible beating to even cleric-based casters. Wizards, arcanists, and sorcerers, odds are they're going to be screwed being stuck in there with them. And even if they have a short sword, a scythe, a mace, a knife, that's a non-magic item now. And they're having to attack a sphere with a hardness of 40 and 20 hit points per caster level. They are not going to be able to scratch that at all very effectively, even if they have an adamantine weapon on hand. Especially, and again, low strength score, or at least not as high a strength score as a barbarian or fighter would have, or cavalier, or even samurai. Those kinds of classes are going to have so much fun going to town on an enemy spellcaster, and bear in mind, this is locking down a high-level enemy spellcaster. You're still probably going to have other threats to deal with, but it's on other threats that are not having a main power source tipping the scales in their favor. So you and the rest of your party are going to be able to mop up probably pretty effectively. It's going to depend a little bit, but there's certainly nothing wrong with taking an enemy spellcaster offline. It also should be noted that because this is an anti-magic field, summoned creatures are going to wink out of existence. Now, if the spell ends, they should pop back into place as long as the spell keeping them in play hasn't ended. But for the time being, they are going to just be gone from the battlefield. So you could potentially deal with multiple threats at once. And something to keep in mind, and again, another great spell for you to have handy. And lastly here today, we have Dominate Monster. This is like Dominate Person, except it's not limited to humanoids. This has the broadest swathe, reach, and ability to afflict opponents across the board, although they have to be susceptible to mind-affecting domination effects. You target one creature within 25 feet plus 5 feet every 2 caster levels, and on a failed will save and bypassing their spell resistance, the target is under your control for 1 day per caster level. Again, another instance where you can get a couple extra days out of this by spending an arcane reserve point. You must spend 1 round each day, absolutely worth the cost, concentrating to prevent the creature from receiving a new saving throw for that day. And also by concentrating, you are able to receive sensory input from the creature as interpreted by its brain. Now, this doesn't mean you're able to see through its eyes, smell with its nose, feel what it's touching, interact with in the world through their body. No, you're picking up the sensations as its brain is interpreting it. So it's the closest you could get to first-person information without actually receiving it. You're right there. It's like being in the passenger of a car, only through the driver's perspective while you're riding in the car. So you can get a lot of information still that way. And they'll follow relatively simple or even complicated commands fairly well. You know, fight this, attack that, do your job, clean this, do that, scrape this, cook this. They'll do all those things. However, actions against the creature's nature provides it with a new saving throw and giving a +2 bonus, and obviously self-destructive orders are ignored. Now, what constitutes an obviously self-destructive order? Well, if you use this, say, on an elderly halfling and tell them to go fight, say, a half-ogre bodyguard, that's probably something I would interpret as obviously self-destructive. But if you've used this successfully, say, on a dragon, well, that dragon might look at that and go, all right, we'll go and fight that. And that dragon is your minion for days per caster level. So you can get a lot done with this. However, bear in mind, if you lose control and you've dominated something like a dragon, they are going to have some thoughts, feelings about that, and they are going to want to have a word with you and anybody associated with you. So that's something to keep in mind there. That's granted, again, days per level, you could potentially be recasting this to keep them under the effect, under your control, but things can get a bit dicey there. And don't forget, effects like Dispel Magic certainly still exist. Or Mage's Disjunction as another example. So there's risks, but there's a lot of benefits. Just take care to have a bit of preparation in place. But there are certainly more spells to cover. We'll be doing more next weekend, assuming everything continues to go as planned. Certainly had a bit of a curveball. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Certainly there's plenty more spells like Greater Create Demiplane that can do so much, but it's such a massive spell and its effects are so many that it probably would deserve its own video on its own to talk about it as something is more of a potential fun option. But it's a great way to create your own pocket dimension where you can hold a lot of the reins of power and huge advantages over any opponents that might be daring to follow you there. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. These are just some of the classic spells you can pick up. There's other great spells, there's plenty of good ones, and there's plenty of spells that are actually even kind of just okay and even bad at this level. And bad in the sense that it's not that they're not powerful, it's just that either prior spell levels have spells that do the same thing or do it better, or you're not getting the same effect as you do with other 9th level spells. So those are all things just to keep in mind there. But for now, we're going to end it there. I've been your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time. Good gaming to you all. And you all have yourselves a good night.